15. Well, here's a surprise, the Citywide Discretionary Response Fund applications. Jackie, hello Jackie.
I'm from the community funding team, so I'm here to talk to the rest of the discretionary response fund applications for May. So we have 3 in the fund. Screen Edge Limited with Doc Edge International Documentary, Canterbury Mathematical Association with Cantermath, and New Zealand Opera with additional support for New Zealand Opera's 3rd season.
Right, everyone happy? That's pretty self-explanatory. Questions? Yeah, all right. Tim will move it. And anyone wants? And yeah, there was questions. Yeah, anyone want to second it? Well, I'll second it. Right, questions was Sarah and Celeste and Tyler. Tyler was first. Sorry. Yep.
Kia ora. Just a quick question around the NZO and what schools that they work with.
That question has been asked. It wasn't in their application, but it has been asked to them. And
well, actually, that's all we can say. So I was requested information from the NZO, but haven't been updated. So we did discuss. I have a semi-regular catch-up with the CE, and we did discuss schools following deliberations around the last Strengthening Communities. And have pointed them to look in the direction of schools that are both based within our territory, but also to those schools which might be the old Decile 1, 2 sort of profile as well.
Okay. I know I've asked this question multiple times for NZO, particularly around the annual plan and long-term plan, and a lot of them weren't quite clear. But it was included in the rationale, which said it'll involve singers from age 8 with an invitation to a range of schools to participate, particularly those with the greatest need. I'd love to get some more information on that. The next question is around the salaries and wages. Are the staff based here?
Not the core staff from the NZO, no. And I'm not. I did check on the website this morning. I'm not sure where the primary performers are based, but potentially Auckland or across the country. Yeah.
Okay. That's all the questions I've got for now. Thank you so much.
Sarah, please.
Thanks. I've just got a question about how we work out what is school related and what is not school related. So we've got Cantermath, and it's a mixture of that and the opera. We've got an external organisation running an outside of school activity that happens to be on a school subject, so maths, and gets a couple of thousand kids together to have a big hui. They've been, great to watch in the past. But we're told, no, that's educational. And then we've got New Zealand Opera, which, while it's called New Zealand Opera, it's music, which is also a school subject, doing something proposed in schools, and that's not, it's a music thing within schools, and that's not primarily schools. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're both, this is more around why we don't found Cantermath probably, but it's, they're both kind of school related, and where do we draw that line?
So with the community involvement in the NZ Opera, and that includes reaching out through schools to involve students, they will work with the professional musicians and performers, and they will be performing at the Isaac Theatre Royal. So it's not for activity that takes place in the school auditoriums.
But neither does Cantermath. It's just like, where do we draw that, and how do we draw that? Maths is a core subject at school, but actually music is too at primary school. How do we sort that?
It is
the vibe.
Yeah, it is a hard one to distinguish at times. For the Cantermaths, the rationale looked at the project outcomes that the organisation provided, and a lot of them, or they were all focused on goals that better align with industry and education outcomes rather than the things that our strengthening community strategy talks to. So that was the rationale for that one.
Okay, and how does the opera one then talk to our strengthening community strategy?
We'll talk to certain pillars of it, but
Yeah.
we do take a toi o tautahi lens across that, and so what's the benefit for arts and culture across the city, and the opportunities it creates for rates of participation, and opportunities for participation across age groups.
Yeah, and the thing is, like they're all worthy kind of things, right? It's just where things sit. So if it's a toi o tautahi thing, should it come under like a toi o tautahi kind of funding rather than strengthening? It's that, or is it just because there's no funding with that?
The arts funding sits within the strengthening communities pool of funding.
Okay, so it's more out of that. Okay, so the other question on the opera one was, what's meant by additional funding, and how did we not see this coming when we look at like compared to Ferrymead?
So when we
Seeing things coming or not?
When we assessed the last Strengthening Communities application, we noted a decline in the level of activity in the city, and we did challenge. That was a challenge we gave back to NZO. You know, what are you doing here? So what they've come back with is said we've actually got an additional program. It's community based, so they'll be offering and leading that programming here, also presenting and offering the same opportunity in Wellington and Auckland. And so that's in addition to what we were looking at in terms of their programming at the time for last year. So this funding is to support activity to happen in the lead up to the staging of the opera in early September.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I think the question's been asked, but I'll just sort of pick up on it again. I think we've asked it a few times, and I'm surprised they haven't provided any data about the schools, because it's quite an important part of their application.
I do know that they reached out to the schools, and I'm sorry, I didn't keep, it was in a meeting, and I didn't keep a list of the schools' names that I offered. It was quite broad, quite a lengthy list, and I know they went away and were working with that list, how far through, whether, you know, how much, how many of the schools took up the opportunity, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Do you think if they were given sort of moved ahead with this, they would report back on what that looks like in practice? Because I'm wondering if they send out an invitation, but some schools don't have an opera or a music program, specialist music program, whether there'll be much uptake in those areas where it might not. They might need a bit more support to get involved. So I'm not quite sure what that looks like in the application. It's sort of like, is it an email invitation, or is it like more facilitated support to get people involved?
We can make those follow-up questions, and certainly we expect to see NZO come back through the next Strengthening Communities. So they'll be, you know, they'll be needing to
report back and stuff.
Report back and also express how they're managing that community engagement. Yeah.
There's two questions around the Kentamath one. One is, why have they come to us? Because they haven't come to us before, so what's changed?
I can't speak to necessarily why. I know they first came to our events team and their criteria didn't match that source of funding, and then they came to us next. I understand that they have sought some other funding, some of which has been unsuccessful so far. But the event is later in the year, so I'm guessing they still have some work to do in terms of seeking corporate partnership and sponsors before then.
Yeah, it's just interesting because they've been running for decades and decades, so something's clearly changed. I was also wondering where they were wanting to, what the venue hire is, because it's very expensive.
Yeah, so the venue is Wolfbrook Arena, and they budgeted $47,400 for that.
Okay, thanks.
Kia ora. Do we get any reports back from those who are successful in strengthening communities and how they've gone?
Yes, we do.
Do we have access to NZO with their reports back?
Previous reports.
Yeah.
Yeah, should be.
Probably that will probably help us steer our direction a bit easier going forward, I guess, and seeing how they performed. Reason being is I'm not quite sold on this yet. But if I did see their performance in their last reports, it would be probably more helpful. Would that be able to be circulated after this?
Remember?
Yes. Yes, we can definitely get you that information.
They do come.
Thank you.
Yeah, they had them in their office as well. Sorry.
Thank you.
Didn't have the button down. Andre. Yeah.
Thank you. Something I'm trying to get my head around. So we've got things like the Events Festivals Fund, there's the Creative Communities Funding, and they're very, very heavily oversubscribed scans by whether it's 400%, 500%. So there's a lot of local organisations not being able to access funding or missing out. And a lot of them applying for small amounts, might be 5,000, 3,000, and most of them are still missing out. So are they then able to then apply through Discretionary Response Fund? Like if we're really short on being able to fund a lot of these things, but we can fund things if we so want to through this fund. I'm just trying to get my head around where the line is drawn, and if there's this great big oversubscription of funds for creative communities type initiatives,
Yep.
then why would this not be contestable as in the context of all other arts
So
programs?
the discretionary response fund for Metro is usually for unforeseen circumstances. So it's kind of those organisations that hit a wall and something that they couldn't plan for has happened. So that's a small portion. The board tend to run their discretionary response funds where they will fund local events and things like that.
Yeah.
So they run it quite differently. So there is that local fund available to those. Creative Communities is an external fund, so it has its own rules through Creative New Zealand, and generally tends to be smaller amounts as well. So we kind of have Strengthening Communities, which is the one that generally they have to go to once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. My recollection, and it was a few years ago, is that Cantermath used to get some funding or support from us, and I think they used to be in the town hall. So, you know, one of the changes has been the extraordinary costs now for community groups to hire the Venues Aotearoa facilities. I was just wondering, is there a way that we could talk to Venues Aotearoa about seeing what venue sort of sponsorship was available to enable something like Cantermath? It just to me seems like the event that, you know, it would be great to have it in the town hall or in one of our facilities given its significance, but I get that there's a huge funding cost.
Yeah, it might be outside of the scope of this application, but certainly we can kind of work with the relevant teams to have those conversations.
Right. Okay. And are we able to check back and see if we have funded it in the past?
I was just trying to do that, but a two-factor authentication, and I can't do.
Oh yeah, no, that's cool. But
I can get you that information if we've
I'm talking
funded
like
them
20
in the
years
past.
ago. I'm not talking like 5 years ago or 6 years ago.
It'll be
but
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It would be just good to know what that funding relationship has been. If we decline it today, are they able to come back with an alternative thing, or is it better just to lie on the table and allow that work to happen?
I guess it depends on whether there's funding in the fund, because at the moment we're getting to the point where we might be expending the fund over the next month or so. So they can certainly apply, but then if they don't get it in before we've expended it, the next opportunity won't be till at least September, October.
And I guess moving forward, it could be a conversation of whether they would be, whether it would be better for them to apply to something like Strengthening Communities over DRF. Just seeing as it is an annual event, it doesn't necessarily align with the criteria of needing to be unforeseen or unpredicted, which the DRF prescribes.
And do you know how much, like, what's their financial position? Like, if we decline the funding, what will happen? Will the event still go ahead, or?
So that kind of detail wasn't provided to us. We only got limited information back from them when asked.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so that's it. Tim?
Yeah, just a minute. Why do Cantermath want to be in the town hall or Wolfbrook Arena? They could run it anywhere really, couldn't they, in a sense of a large venue?
I couldn't speak to their preference of venue, sorry. But I believe that was where they hosted it last year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mark, is that you? No. Okay, so it's got a mover and seconder. We've had plenty of questions, and I understand Kelly wants to sing to his debate. Is that right, Kelly? You're rescinding your. Okay.
I'll give it a lash. In honour of my mother, who was a singer in the Christchurch Repertory Society, I support this motion today, but that's not all that I have to say. Opera is cool, opera is fun, but personally I'd rather go for a run. I'd encourage you and you and you to support this lovely motion too. Let's have some fun. The opera season's begun. Opera all day.
I'm so pleased my hearing aid batteries were flat. Right, is there any more debate on this? Tyler, please. Well, he's here.
I feel like I'm going to be a Debbie Downbuzz with following Kelly's one.
You can deliver this through the medium of dance.
I'm more of a rapper. I'm a bit of a rapper myself, but I'm not going to do that. But I just wanted to see if it's possible if I could provide an alternative in my debate, which is giving the NZO 12650, which actually pays for the equipment, materials, rent and venue hire, and equipment and materials again from the contribution sought towards it. That's the alternative that I wanted to see if we could add that as an amendment.
Were you? Sorry, we're in your debate. Were you at the briefing when they came? Were you here? That you might not have been. You might have been tied up. That when they came and did a briefing on how little we actually give them and how much it costs them to actually come down to Christchurch, and how much people really want them down in Christchurch, obviously, Kelly. So that they actually were after a little bit more.
Process, we are in debate, so you foreshadowing. You'll be foreshadowing if this fails. No.
I had to do it. I can't. I had to do it during debate. Obviously,
the mover and seconder can agree to amend theirs, or
they'll probably say no. So
probably right.
I'll be moving an amendment.
Okay. So have we got any more
of 12650? Of 12650.
No. Okay. Tim.
Thank you. Look, with opera, just
yeah. So.
Okay, has the amendment been seconded?
So if it's a foreshadowed amendment, it doesn't need a seconder.
Right.
No, but you don't get a foreshadowed amendment though, right? You get an amendment or a foreshadowed motion.
Right, but so with respect to what Councillor is saying, essentially if the mover and seconder aren't agreeing to a reduction in the funding and recommendation for...
Sorry, no. Yep.
Right. Then you, if
no, then it's only if it fails. But if you want to actually vote on it, it's an amendment.
We would consider...
Yes.
Foreshadowed motion.
Yeah. Okay. Happy? Good.
So there's a choice. You've got a choice between either moving it now so people get to debate on that one first, or never getting to debate on it.
If people vote against number 5, and then your one becomes live.
Well, point of order though, what are the rules around what is a valid amendment and what needs to be considered as a foreshadowed motion? Because we had the same thing happen with the...
The councillor can move an amendment, and if he gets a seconder, we can choose to put the amendment first and vote on that. And if that loses, go to that.
Yeah.
Or we can treat it as a foreshadowed amendment, that we do this one first and foreshadowed motion.
Yeah.
Can you move an amendment during debate?
Yes, that's when you're supposed to.
That's when I'm supposed to do it.
When you're meant to move them.
Yes.
Yes.
So
right. So what would you like to do?
What I'm hearing, Councillor Johansson, you just seconded?
I'm asking you to make a grant of 12650 out of the discretionary response fund for the New Zealand Opera.
Okay, so we'll consider that an amendment then with, who was the seconder?
Andre. Or Yanni.
Okay. That's great. And then if you're happy, we can do a single debate on both the motion and
Just
the
continue the
amendment on the table.
So you need to just finish your saying.
Right. Is that what we do? Do that first.
Cool. I can finish my debate.
They got a mover and seconder. You're cool. Have we yarn?
Yep, sweet. The only reason why I'm putting this up is because I had this problem in the last Strengthening Communities debate, which was that we were paying for Aucklanders' salaries, and we were taking our money away from our discretionary response fund to actually go into Auckland's hands. That's one of the only reasons why I was hesitant to continue with this. They do provide a lot of good things in terms of the program. However, I'd love to see some more localism involved into this, have some more citywide focus to be able to fund those who are going to be putting their money into Christchurch's pockets instead of going out elsewhere, particularly when it's ratepayers' funds. That's my only argument. That's the only reason why. I'm asking for them to be going into equipment and materials, rent and venue hire, and equipment and materials as per those last three lines in the contribution that's sought towards. We can't tell them where they should be putting it, but I'm wanting to note it and advise the NZO this is where I would like to intend to put the money. Kia ora.
Okay. Tim?
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a shame, really. You know, like we're going to go. I mean, how many warriors are from Canterbury? I mean, probably quite a few, to be quite honest. But let's be honest, we pay incentives for a lot of groups to come here for the betterment of Christchurch. Behind those stars, there are a whole network of talent that never get on stage. They never get in front of the public, but they are Christchurch-based talent. They are, you know, follow spot operators, whatever they are, sound, staging, things are built here. The main building for any musical theatre is actually based here in Christchurch. So all of this adds to our employment. So you can look at it in the face, you know, of how many opera singers are from Christchurch. Actually, a hell of a lot. We are really, really lucky to have the talent we do. And remember, New Zealand Opera started as Canterbury Opera by the late Chris Doig. He was a great champion. He was based here. The Doigs are a great Christchurch family. We were really privileged to have that. When we talked before about FerryMed, it takes a while to change things. So suddenly they can't just come down and enter all the schools, because schools have programs, as we know, whether decile 1 or 10, they have programs and they've got to start integrating into those. So things take time to change. It's good that we're signalling that, and yes, perhaps they need to give us more information, or our staff more information about how they're going forward, but to kind of shoot them off at the pass, I think is a real mistake. We've got so much talent here, and if you look at those young New Zealand opera singers coming through, the talent's fantastic and from all walks of life, and I think we should be supporting them and encouraging them to come here more often. So, thank you.
Sarah?
Thanks so much. And I know that for staff, you know, who there's limited fund, and when they're doing these assessments, it's not easy. But what this really does highlight is that we do need to have a closer look at our criteria. You know, we've just heard a significant amount of debates about the work that New Zealand Opera are doing in schools, and yet Kentamath, because it was a school-based thing but happening outside of school, we drew a line there. So we need to, probably ahead of the next Strengthening Communities round, have a much clearer understanding as a council, both organisation and elected members, as to where we draw that line, what things should be the education ministry's responsibility, which things are we willing to pick up when the education space fails, and which things we're not. And our role isn't in career development, if you like, it's in strengthening communities and community staff. And so while I'm happy to support New Zealand Opera getting some money, I'm not quite sure how much at this point, I struggle with not supporting such an amazing event as Kentamath, which I'm pretty sure we have funded at some point in the past. Like we've seen it come through strengthening communities and things at other times. And you know, I've watched my kids there at Wolfbrook, which must have been many years ago now because they're in their late teens. So we do need to have a clearer understanding of that as we go forward. Thanks.
Honey? Yeah, Yanni, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I was happy to support the amendment. I think we do have to be realistic about the quantum of discretionary money that we have left available until the new financial year. And also, actually, we've got an art strategy that talks about supporting local artists. We have some amazing local opera community groups in our city now, new ones that have formed, and they are struggling to get funding, and support. So, in my mind, I appreciate the work that New Zealand Opera does, but actually, in terms of local priorities, I would see that we do have other priorities as well that are equally as important. I do share the concern around Cannamath. When I've seen, and for those of us who have had children who have been into performances in the town hall or, Wolfbrook, when you see the kids going into these civic facilities and the pride that they get from being able to enjoy it and be feeling that special ability as a city to celebrate, whether it be maths, whether it be music, whether it be many other things across the four well-beings, I think it is incumbent on us. I mean, if we can pay ratepayer money to subsidise professional sports going into our venues, why can we not support kids learning maths and celebrating mathematical achievement as well? And one of the concerns I've had with the town hall, and I know we've passed some resolutions around to venues Aotearoa in the past, is ensuring that these venues are accessible to our community organisations to use. And, I'm predicting that the Cannamath application will be declined today. I don't support it being declined, but I do hope that we can find a way with venues Aotearoa to work through a greater way to get these community type events, especially with our children, to be able to use our facilities and feel that same sense of pride that professional people might have when they get the ability to perform in these places. So thank you to the staff. This is always a tricky decision. But, I think we've had pretty good advice to our Strengthening Communities assessment in the past around New Zealand Opera and around what their art strategy is focused on. So I'm supporting giving them some, but I do think we've also got other priorities that we need to contribute to as well.
Andre, please.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's no secret I support bringing more events here. I've dealt with so many different arts organisations who volunteer run. We're talking no salaries, and we don't give them any funding whatsoever. And it's not from not applying, because the funds they're applying through are so heavily contested. The Creative Community Scheme, for example, if I recall correctly, it's something like 160k every 6 months, and about 70-80% of applications miss out because it's very heavily oversubscribed. And they might be applying for 2,000, 3,000, really, really small amounts, but for events or programs that will reach a huge amount of people, be it young or otherwise. So I absolutely support any funding for New Zealand Opera, but when all these organisations are missing out on very small amounts, but there's 25,000 here, I just can't support that amount. We've got to make sure it's fair to all and that we're getting as much accessibility to the arts as possible. So it's just the amount I'm uncomfortable with. And if all of these different organisations, if they knew that they could come to council and speak to us and then apply through the Discretionary Response Fund, I tell you what, we'll start getting hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds, and they'll all be worthy because there's so many good programs out there. So just on the Mayor's point about us not giving opera much, that's the case for hundreds of different people out in the arts community at the moment. And then when they see this, that there's $25,000 going to this, but $0 to us in the last year because we were told there's no money, yeah, it's just the amount I'm uncomfortable with.
Mel? Then Mark.
With the Cannamath one, I mean, they're asking for basically most of that money is to cover venue costs, which are extremely expensive. I don't know why it's that cost. I don't know what length of time it's over. I would like to move an amendment that venues Aotearoa look at the cost of venue hire for school groups or for school events to make them accessible for school children.
Could I just remind councillors that we reduced the subsidy for communities? I realise that, but there's some misinformation here.
Carry on. You done?
Yep.
Yep, you've said.
And you want that to be an amendment as well, so we'd
So we'll do this one.
Tyler's amendment and then your amendment.
Yep.
And this is a new amendment. So
I've already spoken. I don't.
Second it.
And I've already
Right,
seconded
we
the
have
first
Mark
amendment.
is next.
I'll second it. Put him down.
Mark,
I've already seconded an amendment. I don't think I can second a second amendment.
And also, just to clarify, because this is a new amendment, councillors should be given, who have spoken, should be given the opportunity to speak to this amendment as well, if they want to. They want to second. They don't have to know that's right, but they should be given a opportunity. if they want
at
to.
the moment, I've got God knows what amendment Mark's speaking on, but he's speaking.
I'm just really looking to speak that I'm not comfortable with these resolutions today to be rejecting funding for the Cantor Math, which is quite a fundamental competition for the kids in our city, and then to be looking at funding the New Zealand Opera. I find that a bit of an oxymoron that I really can't be too supportive of. I understand the value of opera, but when we're talking about arts in our city, I sit on the Creative Communities Arts Group Committee, and the volume of funding that this is compared to what was going through that program is exponential. So it's almost a backdoor way of getting around the limits of the other scheme. So I won't be supporting these today. I'd far sooner see us support our local schools and kids with their Cantor Math than look at supporting New Zealand Opera.
Right. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, on the opera one, I want to go with the original recommendation, and my reason for that is having recently met with New Zealand Opera and them explaining that their losses when they come to Christchurch are pretty much 10 to 1 for them to visit here. And as much as I don't really like opera myself, what's that? Well, that was not quite opera. To be fair, it was tuneful, but it was not opera. Christchurch has a proud history in opera. New Zealand has a very proud history in opera, and the idea of New Zealand Opera coming to Christchurch and inspiring young kids to go on to careers in opera, which many do, I think is a noble one. The bit I want to point out, which is often missed, is opera is over-represented by Māori and Pacifica. Well over-represented. Nowhere near the population. In fact, non-Māori and Pacific kids will struggle to make it in opera up against the others, because all our rising stars, when you look at the Toi Autotahi article, lists the number of all of the last 5 winners of the Song Quest competition were all Pacifica. They go on to have massive careers overseas. When you look through this article, in New York, London, Europe, California, there's a number of them that have gone on to have really inspirational careers. And the other side of it is that the Pacifica kids bring a way bigger personality to the stage. That is something the rest of the world doesn't have, and we have a big Pacific base here, and Māori as well, but they can go on to have big careers, and I think we should support that and inspire those kids that grow up in our neighbourhoods here, where they wouldn't see that. They don't get to see the guys from Solomeo unless they come here and do shows and tours and work with those communities. And I think that not everyone will ever be successful, but to at least inspire a kid to be successful in their life and then try to achieve is something we can do. So I think we should be supportive of the staff recommendation. And as far as the Cantor Math kids go, why can't we pimp them out to do a bit of paperwork to pay for the funds? They're all going to be accountants like Sam one day. So.
They could help Pete's team. Could replace Russell.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Sarah.
Thanks. Given the amendment asking venue to Tahi to review and report back to council on their venue costs of school events, and the ongoing concern around the table about school kids and their the ability for us to potentially help with Cantor Maths, I'd like to move an additional amendment, which is for $12,350 to Cantor Math, being the other half of the $25,000. So if we halved if we just did that portion for the New Zealand Opera for kids at school, then we do the other portion for maths outside of school. So $12,350 from the Discretionary Response Fund towards Cantor Math.
So can I just check,
And Mark is happy to second it.
If
So it would have to be-
If Harrison Hunt's submission amendment wins, do you want to foreshadow that one?
I will put it anyway. I will put it anyway. So even if his fails, I think we get to choose whether we give $12,000 to Cantor Math.
Did I make the fatal mistake of saying we were going to get out of here early today?
Mark.
We probably paid for it the amount of time we've been talking for it. Right.
We don't get paid on an hourly rate, so.
Mark.
Certainly happy to support that amendment from Councillor Templeton, and it makes it a lot more palatable.
Okay, Pauline.
Thank you. I would be supporting the full amount for the New Zealand Opera, and I congratulate Councillor Kewen on an excellent debate there. And I think it's really poignant to mention Pacifica and Māori and where they've got lungs. But I would also like to move an amendment. And I really would like you to consider this, because the amendment that Councillor Templeton's put up, I don't have enough information to support that. I don't know if they would be able to continue with half the fund. And also, we don't know if they would be able to deliver that at all. We don't know if Venues Otautahi will be able to contribute anything. My amendment would be to lay the Cantor Math on the table and revisit that when we have the information and the answers to our questions about that.
Yes, sensible.
I can second it.
I don't know why we haven't formed.
Aaron seconding it.
Yeah, and I think it could have been brought up in informal.
This is a big day. Right. So we've got
Does that mean
one.
my amendment goes first because it came in last?
Yeah. Okay, so has anyone else got any amendments? But yeah. Tim, are you talking about something?
I'd like to continue my debate.
Continue away, sir.
Just laying it on the table procedural.
I'm not sure that you can do a procedural motion direct plus debate.
But I just did.
Righto, we're going to have 5 minutes.
So we can do it.